To the speaker series presented by the Entrepreneurs Forum. This is a weekly event featuring industry leaders held every Thursday on Zoom. It's designed for learning and networking. I'd like to introduce our sponsor, Mundo Digital Designs, which is a female-led web design and branding agency with a strong social impact focus. Every project with them is a step towards empowerment. For every new client, they sponsor therapy and provide valuable business and design skills to women in need. Today's episode is the Financial Canvas with Boris Blum and his very amazing guest, Will Black. Welcome, Boris and Will.
Thank you. I am so excited to spend some time with Will talking with a real, authentic entrepreneur. I will tell you, he's got more hats that he's juggling than probably many of us. And I'm excited to have a conversation with him for a number of reasons. But one is, most entrepreneurs are interested in making money. That's part of the reason why they got into business. And I'm sure that Will is quite interested in that as well. But he also has another part of his life that is he's been able to effectively merge into his entrepreneurial efforts. And I think it's phenomenal. And it's what his purpose in life is all about. And that is the charitable aspect of things. And we all want to give back to our communities, to charities in general. And he's been able to make the two things work together. I think it's a unique story, and I'd love to share it with everybody. So, Will, thank you for hopping on the call, and I'm excited to have a chat.
I'm glad to be here. I like the financial podcast. The canvas that you paint is I've watched your own interviews, and I want to say, Boris, get out of my head. I swear you're crawling around looking at the notes and the frustrations I've seen. So glad to be here.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to explore this journey that you've been on of entrepreneurship over your lifetime. You've been involved in a number of many businesses, right? So, everything from payment services and processing to, dry cleaners and all over the place. And I'd love for you to walk us through that and how you got to all of these various parts of your business enterprises and how they kind of all work together and mesh for you.
Well, I don't know if they mesh, right? It's kind of like going into Ferris wheels and spaghetti production. It's I love Alex Hormozy, and he has said in the past, he's like, you got to ditch the fancy and go with the fundamentals. And that may sound like a high school basketball coach, but right, let's see some fundamentals out there. It's always the same. When we, sharing the credit, and we automate philanthropy, but at the end of the day, it's payment solutions, obviously, right? But you always have to say, what's the bang for the buck there? Previously, we had always used banks as our lead gen. But when we realized we're giving to this and this is helping the charities, there's a sea change there, right? There's a real paradigm shift, and you've got to be able to say that's not how we're doing it anymore. And it's hard to leave the way you've always done it. One of my most hated phrases in life. This is the way we've always done it. And you have to say our charities are our legion, and we have to go after them. You yourself have said, in the Financial Canvas, people get in their own way, right? Their own mindset, giving them their own agency to be able to get out of their own way and be able to look at it, a little bit differently. That almost broke my brain. I lost a couple of IQ points trying to make that change. The dry cleaners and the vacation pieces, it was not dissimilar. It's easy to look at and chase the shiny object syndrome, but like dry cleaners is how do you get the most bang for your buck, right? What's your lead gen source? You've always got your counters, which is where most people do it. Dry cleaners over the last decades or so, they've built routes and they've got, some poor guy in a van driving around from place to place to place. I didn't want somebody going and picking up single shirt. I'm like, what kind of cash movement is that for me, you know, versus, you know, what I'm paying out. And I said, how do I build more counters? And so we went after hotels, which is a collection, you know, of people. We went after businesses, and we said, listen, we made a joke about it. We said, save your lunch hour for lunch, right? You know, you've got to wear clothes, you've got to have them pressed, you've got to have them taken care of. We'll give you a bag. And we turned it into what we call, kind of jokingly, Amazon Prime dry cleaning, right? 2-day delivery, no shipping charge. We'll pick it up on Tuesday, drop it off on Thursday, and who cares? And so instead of somebody going to some, you know, Boris's house and maybe getting one shirt, you know, because you're going out on Friday night, you're now getting 20, 50, 100 garments, and
Sure.
it's just basic fundamentals. How can we, for the financials, how can we move the most money?
Well, what's interesting for me in what you're talking about, and for purposes of the audience, you know, I find a lot of entrepreneurs, they think of a business that's kind of very common. Everybody understands what a dry cleaner does. But what they don't understand is that there's innovative ways to approach the business to differentiate your operation from everybody else. And so most people that get maybe into the dry cleaner business, I'm presuming, end up having a job instead of a business. You know, they show up every day, they got to deal with the 3 to 4 employees in their location, right? And they're running a traditional dry cleaners. And I think you've taken a completely different route to that. You've been able to scale that operation, which is wonderful. And so I see this unique, innovative, creative thinking in everything that you do, whether it's the payment processing business, which we'll talk about in a minute, because I think it's absolutely incredible, or the dry cleaning business. Is you're constantly thinking as an entrepreneur, as an innovator, how can I differentiate my business? How can I serve my clients better? And I think that is really, really cool. With regards to the payment processing business, I'd like to take a step back, because the audience, we don't know how many of them actually are involved in payment processing today with their businesses, and give them a context of that industry and why it's so important. Because obviously today, I mean, you can't function without plastic. Everybody's got a credit card or a debit card. That's how we transact business nowadays. But from a business standpoint, give us a sense of what that industry is all about and how your operation is so vastly different than anybody else's.
That is a broad stroke, and yet it cuts to the pith of the question, right? I have to sound harsh, but we're adults here. That's the thing about being in business. My industry preys on ignorance. And in the worst way, right? It is, except for the medical industry, it's about the only thing where you don't know what you're going to be charged for this agreement you're getting in. And when somebody knows what they're being charged, I have to stifle a laugh to the point where I bite my tongue or lip to the point I'm tasting pennies. It's terrible. Let me put that in perspective. Different card types charge different amounts, right? I was about to say I haven't read this in 5 years. I haven't looked at it in 5 years, because the last time it almost gave me an aneurysm. The list of Visa cards 5 years ago was 21 different card types, was 21 pages long in fine print. If you're like, wouch, right? And everyone having a different rate. MasterCards was 118 pages. Now you sit there and say, Will, tell me exactly how much this is going to cost my business at the end of the month. Can't be done, right? I have no idea who's coming in your business, carrying what, doing what at any one point in time. Worse is, I'll give you an example from the industry. A senior VP at a processor, right? This is a guy that's been in the industry. He makes a couple of $1 million a year he works a 4-hour day. His main job at his company is to design his company's merchant statement. And that means, you know, you've got a checking account, you get a checking account statement at the end of the month, right? Same with a business. If you take plastic, you get a statement. Not everybody knows what a statement is, right? he designs his for his company, and he says, wait for it, I can't read my competition statements.
Mhm.
What does that mean for your average Boris, Ben, Rhonda sitting in there, who doesn't do this, who doesn't design their company statement, right? It's made to have as much data and as little information as possible. And pretty soon, I'm not insulting the gingers out there. I've got a lot of ginger in my family. Makes you feel like the proverbial redheaded stepchild. You're not meant to know what it is. And so you quit looking, and you just you keep losing the pound of flesh.
Yeah, and I'm familiar with the industry a little bit, and I can say that, processors employ whole teams of people, analysts that will take existing credit card statements to analyze them and come up with a new way to sell this client a new package, right? They have to have teams of people to analyze this, and they expect the consumer to actually look at a statement and make heads or tails of it. Most business owners just look at it and say, okay, great, and file it away, because they got to move on. They have no way to understand what the costs involved are.
And you think the bigger guys have people and they know better, right? And you've heard me say, and Boris, it's no slouch here. I mean, you ran a house office, right? This is like me telling a Jedi master what a lightsaber is. But the third client I ever talked to when we were doing it in this format was a car dealership doing $1 million a month. So they've got people, they know what they're doing, right? They have a small army of their own bookkeepers. And yet when we sat down to do their numbers, we said, you're overpaying $30,000 a year in fees, right?
Mm-hmm.
By the way, Boris, this is when the big boss, who's been sitting there like the grand admiral of the daggone fleet, hasn't said 2 words past hello, all of a sudden is a 12-year-old on Christmas morning, right? Loses all stoic reserve, and he goes, wow, that's a car, right? It's a whole car. But they don't know what they don't know. We had to show an organization that did almost $30 million a month. We said, here's what you don't know, and here's how you can make this little change that would save them about $3.6 million annually, and still allow them to give another $1 million or so to charity. And they weren't prepared for it, right? There's always something. There's always some tuning.
Yeah, transparency is not something the industry is known for. That is
that's a bad word in this industry, but don't you dare say transparency. The Visa MasterCard Gestapo is going to come after you.
Yeah. Now, tell the audience a little bit about how your program differs from a traditional processor. Like most processors, obviously, they're in business to make money. Yes, they're going to try to win your business by claiming that they're going to save you some money, and maybe they will, relative to what you're paying. But at the end of the day, they're not there to do anything but earn a living off of your processing fees. Your business is structured quite differently, and it's kind of a win-win for everybody. So I'd like to hear about that.
Well, yeah. Thank you for that setup. I'll take an alley-oop anytime you want to give it to me and dunk off that. I think it makes me sound like a little better human being than I am. I'm not allergic to money. But we have a saying, and that is, I say, everything I touch gives, right? If I'm going to have a business, if I'm going to have a finger in it, I'm going to make it give, and for a reason, which is not shocking, because 80% of businesses in America actively give. They don't always formally give. There's a difference. Mm-hmm. But Boris is like, no, I'm going to give to somebody, and the right charity comes in your door, and you're going to get to them. You're going to help. We help a business automate their philanthropy, and we use their payment solution to do that. And a lot of people right now are thinking, I know all those English words, but put together that context doesn't help me. So here it is in 30 seconds. You meet anybody, when we go into a business, and it can be a physical business with a storefront, it can be an online business, e-commerce website, whole 9 yards. And we pay them with plastic, right? Debit card or credit card. As long as we pay a business in plastic, that business, what happens? Visa, MasterCard, at the end of the month, they come in and they take their pound of flesh, right? They don't bill you, they don't invoice you, they yank first, and then they tell you this is what we took and why. And this is when, by the way, my business owners are going to say, you mean 2.5 pounds of flesh? Well, right? 3 pounds. And that part, right? The Visa MasterCard system is a toll bridge, and you pay to get across it. And it's an absolutely definition of the necessary evil in modern business. That part, what you don't know is that there's a little chunk in there, and it's not even that little. And it doesn't go to Visa, it doesn't go to MasterCard, doesn't go to Discover, Amex, or even Tully Savalas's, Diners Club, if you're old enough to get that joke. I love that joke. It's old. It's an antique. No, it goes back into the system, and it's designed to help feed banks, but it's allowed with the IRS's blessing to go to a nonprofit, right? Because let me demystify it real quick. It's a referral fee, right? Because here's what happens. Teresa is going to open a business. Ben's about to, going on a new venture. Most people, they go on for a little bit. They look up payment solutions. They take a whole caulking gun filled with Excedrin to stop that headache. And because we're, as a people, we know what we know. We're savvy in our area, but not that. And then they get in a car and they go to their local bank and they get them to set up their merchant account. Your local bank doesn't do it. They use guys like me. And Visa MasterCard's got to pay those guys. Well, I'm actually the one. I took this to the IRS and I said, this is a referral fee. I want to be able to give it to charity. Let me tell you about a great afternoon, actually a great day and a half for us. You're going to say this is the party of all parties. Ready? An IRS representative, a tax a foundation CPA specialist, and a tax attorney in a room hanging out. Now you're like, yeah, that is party central, right? That is spraying warm beer on everybody. These are the party animals I want to hang out with. It's not. It's really not. Again, you ran the house office. You've been in these rooms, and no,
I have.
But I'll tell you what's endearing is to hear an IRS person say, I love this idea. This is fantastic. Right. And you're like, because we want to overly villainize, but they're human beings. They have rules they've got to follow, yada, yada. And he's like, there's no problem with this, right? Knock yourself out. And I'm like, well, I need verbiage, right? Knock yourself out doesn't translate to people. But at the end of the day, there's a referral fee. It's a grassroots system that Visa MasterCard builds in so that the banks of the world will refer them. I think the banks are doing fine. I'd rather give that to save puppies. I want to feed homeless people. I want to build symphonies. I want to do all the things that you love. And if it's Boris's business, it's not Will that makes the decision. It's not Visa MasterCard. It's not the IRS. It's Boris says, I want to save puppies. Right? Ron says, I want to build a school. And I've got a charity that goes and builds school. I've got a group that builds wells in India so they can have clean water. Knock yourself out. I hope that makes sense to everybody. That is as basic as I can make it. It's built in. You want to help a bank president get a new Lexus, or you want to save some puppies. If the answer is not puppies, I'm going to send you a puppy for an afternoon. All right.
Yeah. Well, when you told me about this, I thought, man, is this ingenious? Like, literally, I'm going to pay those processing fees anyway, right? There's no downside to me. So even if maybe I'll save a little money on the processing fees, that's good in of itself. But then I'm going to be able to take the money that would have been paid to the bank as a referral fee and redirect it to my favorite charity. Like, that's a no-brainer, you know?
And you really have, this is where set it and forget it really works well. And we all know that, right? We joined a gym 3 years ago. We went twice, but they're still billing us $29 a month. And we're too embarrassed to say, I'm not paying that anymore. We've all done that in some version. Actually, if y'all don't know it, Boris has been on an amazing health run, and he needs to tell you about it. He lost a whole human, and and I love to boost that up. That's an amazing story. But when your business is giving on auto, you don't realize how much you're giving. we had a man call us up, older man, his name is Charlie, and he said, Will, I love my charity. And I'm like, uh-oh. What is, that's the weird setup. And he said, but I don't know how much I'm giving to them, right? And this was back in the day. We're still fairly, our first few years in. And so it was a process we hadn't built in. And I said, well, I can look that up for you. And I told him, I said, one happy birthday. And he said, it's not my birthday. And I said, it is with us, because within 7 days of today, 5 years ago, you signed up to give your charity. And we told him his number, and it was $41,830 something dollars and some change. And he drops his phone. Now, here's your free Scottish word for the day. Ready? Write it down. Sorry for that whole kerfuffle. And I said, sir, are you okay? And you're like, I use kerfuffle twice an hour. He said, sorry for that whole kerfuffle. I said, are you all right? He said, no, I dropped my phone. Would you repeat that? Yes, sir. 41,832, whatever the change was. And he said, my God, man. And I said, Charlie, is there something wrong? And he said, I had no idea it would be that much. I said, well, you've got, you're not doing a few, $2,000 a month. You got a good sized business. You're giving like clockwork, 8,000 and some change every year. And he said, this is a failure point. He said, because I have never written a check to a charity for $8,000 in my life, right? He said, if I had known I'd given $8,000 at the end of my first year, I would have walked 10, 12, or 15 other businesses into that charity's front door. And I said, sir, I've got to get off the phone with you right now. I got to go call your charity. And now they do their donor recognition levels. They bleed this into it. They get an annual report to make sure that they can do this. But it was on set it and forget it. He didn't know. He wasn't thinking about it, and just offhanded. And added a side note, he was hoping it would be $3,000 or $4,000. And that's it. And it's kind of cool when you overshoot the goal so hard that you bounce off Saturn. He was hoping for 3, maybe 4,000, and it was 41 and some change. So,
well, what's amazing to me about that story is not the fact just that he would have never thought of donating that kind of money. He was going to spend that money, and he was going to buy literally a new Lexus for the bank president or whoever was going to be enriched by those referral fees. And what you did is ingeniously came up with a concept in an industry that there are thousands and thousands of processors, thousands of companies in your industry competing. And you came up with an ingenious new way to say, hey, this is a better way of doing this. We can redirect a portion. We're still a profitable company. We're still a for-profit entity, but we're going to redirect a portion of these excess fees that are being paid out in referral fees to a really good charity that somebody cares about. Right. And I just think that's an ingenious process. So what I'd like to discover with you is a little bit off the topic of payment processing and dry cleaning and all the different businesses you have. And it comes down to this. You've been around business for a long time, and you clearly have an innovative, creative mind around how you approach business. What do you look for if you were going to get into a new business, if you were going to acquire a business? What are the kind of things that you look for in a potential successful business venture you'd be interested in?
It's actually, I'm less interested in having hand in a business that is well established and bringing in tons of its own money, because any investment I'm going to put in it to get a percentage of that, I'm going to have a very small return on investment, right? You don't buy high to get high. You try to buy low. And there's so many businesses on a daily basis that it's cringeworthy for Boris to go, why are you not going X, Y, Z? Why are you ignoring these fundamentals, right? And trying to go after these fancy pieces. I won't bang for the buck and simply what isn't being done. I'll make the dry cleaners. I made this suggestion to the previous owners. I said, why aren't you going after hotels? Why aren't you doing just this thing? in a 3 to 4 month period of time is a 20,000. And it's not a big, it wasn't a big group. I think they were, at first they were doing $40,000-$50,000 a month, right? They just made that simple little change. It's nothing fancy. They're paying a guy premium dollars to drive around all day and burn their gas anyway, right? And it was a $20,000 shift in that period of time. And that paid for a lot of, innovations and pieces to it. Most of the time, the main thing it comes back to is what you said. And that is, this is the way we've always done it. And when you can't get out of your own mindset, when you can't give the owner of the business enough agency to say, wait a minute, I own this. I can burn it down and peel it if I want. I can make any change to it I want. What would I do if I'm looking at this with a fresh set of eyes? I want to be able to sit there and say, what is this thing that you can do and not burn the cash? I want to do it for pennies. I want to do it. My favorite price is $3.99. And if I'm already paying this guy to drive around, how can I get him getting not half a bag of clothes, but 20 bags of clothes, right? And it was a simple change for sharing the credit. It was in making the switch to having nonprofits. The nonprofit has a huge vested interest in it, right? They could be getting long-term sustainable funding. So in making them the lead gen, let me tell you something about a nonprofit. They're the exact opposite of your small startup business. How many of these guys have you talked to, right? And you alluded to this, you become your own employee. And you're so busy flipping pizzas, doing tax returns, building websites, that you can't back up and get in your own back office and do the strategic work to grow. A nonprofit is so busy working on the mission that is trying to get another 100, 500,000 more bucks, that they're not being in the mission that they're supposed to do. So if you can make it the win-win, and generally it's a simple and cheap to go, then you can sit there and say, arbitrage. How can I put these chocolate and peanut butter together and get a little extra synergy in the flavor? I just say, what isn't being done? What would I do? If I had a genie in a bottle, and Boris, how many people would you have said, you don't need a genie? You're the genie, dummy. You're the genie. You own it. Make the change, right?
Yeah. I think the opportunity of a lifetime that just is clear as day for me is the fact that we're going to have a retirement crisis in this country. We have entrepreneurs that have reached their retirement years, or coming soon to their retirement years. These baby boomers are involved in a business. Most of the time, they've been in that business for a long time. So they've kind of gotten entrenched. They look at their business as, this is the best I can do because it's the best they've done in the last 10 years. They want to maximize and get out of that business and retire and do something else. And then you come in with a fresh set of eyes and a completely different perspective, and you see all of the opportunities that they don't see. And you can buy that business. They're talking about trying to get a certain multiple on their business because of what their friend got or what they think it's worth, and you're like, no, that's based on the financials, that what it does today. I see what it can do if I tweak a couple things here and turn this into a real moneymaker.
Right.
So I think that is ingenious. And if you probably know Cody Sanchez, and you've heard, about the work that she's done, she's made a living out of this, building an army of people that identify these opportunities, bring them to her so she can do a roll up and turn this into a big private equity operation. Who would have thought, right? And
there are more people trying to exit out of their own businesses because their children don't want the business, and they're leaving so much money on the table. It's insane. I love Cody Sanchez. Absolutely right.
Yeah. So I think that's a huge, huge opportunity. And the fact that you're able to identify those unique kind of approaches to the business makes a big difference for sure. The other question I was going to ask you was around, what are the typical issues that you see in a business that if you had the opportunity to fix them, you would fix them, that most entrepreneurs just don't pay attention to. And there are issues with, maybe operations, maybe sales. I don't know what they might be, but what are your thoughts on that?
This is the question that pains my heart. This is the question that hurts me the most. Let me ask you a question. How many businesses have you interacted with in the past month and a half where you grown a little inside because of the sheer undying enthusiasm of the people that you're interacting with, right? I mean, you just going into your average business today, unfortunately, can be a soul suck enterprise. And it's proverbial if we go to McDonald's or somebody, that person, listen, I care, right? I'm here for my X number of dollars. I'm giving you your bag of French fries and your Coke, and I don't care, right? But the number of businesses I've gone into, I was interacting with somebody. I wanted somebody to fix my garage door. And I'm speaking with the owners of the company, and they've got all the verve of somebody. They actually died last week and nobody told them, right? The coroner hadn't been out to their house. And you want to sit there and say, you understand that if you hate me as a customer, why would I ever give you money? Right? And this is a 5-minute to a 3-week change at most. And you said, I told on our own business practices, I said, if you can't smile, you can't work here, right? And I told this to some young ladies that were working, for example, again, a dry cleaner. A dry cleaner is a steam cave. It is not the sexiest job on the planet, right? And I told them, I said, let me tell you something. When you're on your deathbed or you're writing your memoirs, this job ain't going to be the job, right, that you write in was your absolute favorite, which is why I come back to that. Sharing the credit's a little different because nobody hates working for sharing the credit. You're either saving somebody money or you're getting a charity that might be about to close their doors, long-term funding, right? And that's a little bit of sunshine. But I said to these young women, I said, you're never going to write down that this was my favorite job on the planet. And they said, you're not exactly selling us on the job. And I said, so you take the money that you get at the end of the week for this job that is not your favorite job, and you go to business and they don't care if you buy their item or not. And you're like, I didn't win the lottery. I didn't inherit this. I had to work at not my favorite job in the world to bring you money. Why would I ever do that? And you see scales falling from their eyes. I said, do you want somebody to come in here and do you want to treat them in that way? It was a 3-minute conversation, and it changed all the world, right? We do not want to do it. And it's, Boris, I got to keep coming back to your statement. It's the owner who's in his own way. You have this ability. You got to get out of your own mindset. You got to give yourself enough agency to do it. And you got to sit there and say, I own this. Why can't I do it? And you've got to be able to, if you've got to be your own employee for a couple of weeks while you're hiring better people, then you make that one small sacrifice. I'm the executive dry cleaner. I'm not going in there and pressing your pants. Right. I've got a business and a foundation, other businesses and a foundation on. I'm not doing that. But I need people that are not going to suck the soul out of other people. And it is an investment in human capital to sit there and talk to somebody and say, don't make somebody else's day suck. You will not guarantee your job here by doing that. If you're going to be here, try to be happy. Fake it.
So what you're bringing up is a true failure of leadership. This is the problem organizations have. And I'll use an example that I have a little bit of experience with. If you talk to people that own various franchises, I won't mention a particular franchise, some people may like it or not like it. But they have a knack, right, for building leadership in a very unsexy profession. Flipping burgers is not something that anybody wakes up in the morning and is excited and passionate about as their lifelong career goal, right? But when you get hired at that entry-level position and you realize that, someday I could own this $1 million franchise. I would have that opportunity if I follow some steps and do some things and move up within the company. And over a period of time, I could be that guy that's running this franchise.
Right.
A lot of people are actually quite attracted to that. And many franchises, that's what they've built their whole business on, is taking a person that was in a dead-end job, in essence, and giving them a vision of the future, a career path. Now, granted, they might hire 100 people for that entry-level job. Only one gets it, but they only need one. They only need one guy to
only need one
and own that franchise. So I think that is very, very important. People are the key aspect in any business. You can't grow and scale any operation without the right people. And if you're not paying attention to the people and you're not leading them, it's going nowhere. Your business is not going to scale. So that's
and if you're not doing it, it's you're convince yourself this is the way we've always done it, or you're afraid to do it, and you're like, rip the Band-Aid, man, rip the Band-Aid.
So with that in mind, let's pivot the conversation a little bit, since we're talking about the financial canvas. Let's talk about business owners' own financials. And tell me, what mistakes have you seen entrepreneurs make in their own lives as a business owner when it comes to financial decisions and how they approach that?
Oh, golly, we need a 3-day podcast on that one, right? I always go back to the richest man in Babylon, stick to your lane. Everybody is going to try to sell you the big shiny object, and you're going to throw chunks of money at it thinking that you're going to 3x your business in the next 90 days. And normally that is not the case. And if you need a big shiny object to make some radical change, I would argue, and I would die on this hill. We're going back to high school basketball coach, middle school basketball coach. You're ignoring your key fundamentals, right? You are ignoring a key fundamental that goes in. I'm going to sit there and say, I bet I can walk in and see, and you're either half asleep at the desk, you're not engaging with your client the right way. Throwing money at shiny objects, I think, is a bad thing. When nine times out of 10, the last 3 guys I've talked to on this, I asked them one question. I said, are you asking your existing clientele for referrals? And I mean, right at purchase, right? At purchase, you've signed, for example, sharing the credit, right? You've a business coming on because they're going to help fund this no-kill puppy shelter, right? And then we say right then and there, Boris, thank you for coming on. Thank you for having the vision and the heart to want to support the no-kill puppy shelter of Greater Boise, Idaho, right? And what they do. Not can you. What 3 businesses could you introduce us to that might like to help save more puppies in Boise? That's it, right? You know how much that costs? Exactly $3.99. You've already won the client, right? But more people will go and spend $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 as of cash flow that they work to get in on something that they think is going to be a magic bullet when they're ignoring their absolute fundamental. Boris just signed up. Boris is completely on board with everything we're doing right now. That is the same as going through a ride at Disney World. And what do? You exit through the gift shop. You know what Disney World superpower is? To convince Boris to pay $1,000 a day to stand in line for an hour at a time, sweating, to be on a 4-minute ride. And you are now in a gift shop, and you will pay $42 for a piece of plastic made in China that on Saturday at home you wouldn't pay $13 for in Target, right? Because you're in the moment.
I haven't been to Disneyland for a while.
You're right, but it's you know what it is? It's immersion, right?
Yeah.
There's a reason when you're at a play after the first 15, 20 minutes into the first act that you can't go in, because if you open those doors, you're going to yank all the people out of the story. If you just bought from me, you're a believer in what you did because you just put the money down on the line. If I can say right now, it's 2 millimeter shift, but it's a difference between empires. It's not who could you, it's what are 3 businesses you can introduce us to that would like to help save more puppies.
Yeah.
Don't
Well,
don't go spend another, try your fundamental first.
Yeah,
Go
what
ahead.
you're describing to me is it's a different topic slightly than what I was referring to. So we'll get back to
Sorry.
that. No, but that's okay. I think what you're really talking about is the difference between investing and an expense, right? Every business is going to allocate a portion of their revenues and their cash flow towards something. And a lot of business owners look at things as an expense. And they hope that whatever new shiny object you're describing becomes an investment for them. But oftentimes it's ill-advised. They haven't first optimized what's in the business already before they go spend money on things willy-nilly. What I was more thinking about is, as a business owner, though, every business owner knows that, hey, I got to take a certain amount of money home to cover my expenses, obviously. But, the goal is, this is my number one asset. My business is the number one thing that I put my money and investments into. So I'm going to keep as much cash flow in this business, try to grow this enterprise, try to grow the value. And, for a lot of people, that makes the most logical sense. And to the degree that they don't put aside any part of their cash flow in any methodical way towards building a nest egg outside of the business, because as you and I know, entrepreneurs, things don't always go the way you plan. Sometimes cash flow doesn't come in and you've got expenses that show up that you didn't pay, right? Economy falls apart, we get a pandemic involved or something like that, and all of a sudden you have no outside resources. The bank doesn't want to lend you money, and you're in a pickle. You're likely to fail and be in financial ruin personally if that happens to you. So the question I have around that is, you talk to financial advisors, and they'll all tell you, because that was the industry I came from originally, oh yeah, you've got to save money. You got to take money out of your business, but give it to me. It's kind of like your processing business, right? Give it to me. Trust me. I'm going to put it in a bunch of investments for you, and it will work out for you in the long term. That'll be your retirement fund, even if the business doesn't work out. And then, the black swan event happens, and your 401k and whatever else you put aside becomes a 201k. Your business is struggling, and you have no capital out there to actually solve your problems. It's a double whammy. So that's the problem that I'm alluding to, and I'd love to hear your take as an entrepreneur. How do you balance the act of, I need to build wealth outside of my business. I need to create stability for myself. So if something does go awry, I have capital to access outside of just bank loans and financing.
I've taken 2 specific paths in this. Coming from a real estate family, my father's a real estate attorney. My mother was a realtor. We moved more growing up than people that were actively being hunted in a witness relocation program. I mean, if you ever knew somebody that worked in the finance department at a car dealership, and he had a new car every 9 months, right? There were houses that we didn't have to vacuum because we were moving on to the next property. I've done 2 things, and that is, I either get a little piece of real estate because I believe Lex Luthor, and that is, people will always need land. And even when the market crashes, it's amazing what a piece of land can be, can be worth. And I've invested in a little and some farmland as well which is amazing, because if you buy it, you put a goat, 2 goats on it, and let them roam free and graze. The taxes on it, go to El Zilcho. But I look for another business. I look for another business because there's something small that I can either get in or get a hand in, and I'll tell you, the cool thing about being in a payment solutions is you get to see the ups and downs and the ins and outs of seasons and non-seasons for businesses across the thing, right? Like famously back in the day, I think it was Gillette, and they bought a hair dye company, right? Because one half of the year they were completely up and then they were down, and they mirrored them, exactly, and they wanted to even out, right? The cash flow. And it was a good move for them, right? Made them super solid. And I see businesses come in and out, in and out. I'm amazed at what people often think they have, and yet the amazingly poor valuation. And sometimes these things can be picked up for some. There's another little dry cleaner here in Savannah, and he had somebody come in and do the numbers on his business, and they said it's worth $100,000. $100,000. I'm like, a year, right? I mean, is that so? Cap rate of what, 10, right? So $1 million? No, total $100,000. And if that is not, I'm going home and drinking Black Swan. What is? For me, I bought a large policy so that if something happens to Monsignor Black, Mrs. Black, would be taken care of. It has a whole bunch of commas in it, and my wife, not being an entrepreneur, said, "Is that enough?" You're just like, oh, but no, I did less investing. You do a little 500 index, you do some other things, but for me, it was real estate, and I look for another small business that I can purchase, because sometimes I can make a change and I can flip it and I can sell it to somebody else, and that's a cash cow.
Yeah. Well, I've always said that financial independence, my definition of financial independence, is having 3 non-correlated income streams that do not depend on your day-to-day activity, whether you show up or not.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that is the key. Now, in your case, you're talking about developing these with a number of businesses. So you could have 3 businesses completely non-correlated, right? So you might have a dry cleaner, which has nothing to do with the payment industry business, maybe some other business that completely
polar opposites.
Right. So you literally would have to have a black swan event, right, to wipe all those things out. Maybe right. COVID was one of those things. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is that businesses is a great way to create that kind of a stability for sure. I think real estate is a great way to do that as well. And I think the financial markets maybe is another alternative, is quite good as also. But the point here is, at any given time, any one of those things could be good or bad. The question is, what are you doing about it to actively manage your portfolio of assets? See, right. I think most people are so focused on is income. How much did I make last year? How much am I going to make this year? And income is great, but it misses the bigger picture here, which is, what are the assets that I'm accumulating? Which ones are going up or down? And what does it look like going forward? Like, I'll give you an example. I know a lot of high net worth individuals, and they can afford to live anywhere they want, and they're renting. And you say, well, why wouldn't they buy a property? Why do they own real estate? Because
they eat up some of their capital.
Yeah, they can deploy the capital in a better place today when bonds are paying relatively 5% risk-free, right. and the cap rate on their real estate is below 5%, and it isn't risk-free. Why right. would I do that? So it's a question of time and allocation and how you develop an investment approach. But I think the problem with a lot of business owners is they're used to being in a position where they control things, right? The reason they're in business for themselves, they can control their destiny. At least they feel they have that kind of control. But what ultimately happens, though, is when you get distracted from the day-to-day of the business and you start putting things in other areas, let's say the financial markets, you can't really focus on that because you're running your dry cleaners or the payment processing company or whatever. You don't have the time to have your attention somewhere else. So you actually have to abdicate that responsibility to somebody else. Well, you shouldn't, but most people do. And they get a financial advisor and somebody that will manage that for them. And so there's a thought process here in my mind that may not be such a good idea for everybody, because if they're going to give it off to somebody else, they're abdicating that responsibility. They're likely going to put themselves in a black swan risk situation, right? Because if something does happen, they have no way to mitigate it because they're incapable. They haven't educated themselves about what is prudent wealth management approaches, wealth creation approaches, how should they be allocated. So they can't really assess what these other people might be doing for them or not, right? So I wanted to get your take on that because I think it's important that business owners don't make the assumption that it's just like with working with people. You have to inspect what you expect, right? You can't just turn it over to people and hope it's going to turn out okay, you know?
Don't do the James Bond villain event. I'm just setting the death trap in place and I'm walking out, ignoring it and assuming, oh, what exactly the way I want it. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's been a great chat. And I really appreciate it. I know we're coming short on time. And so we're going to probably be turning it over to Erica in a second here. But thank you for coming by and giving us some of your insights. I think what you're doing with your charitable efforts is incredible. And if a business owner out there is thinking about their payment processing business, I don't see why they would not look at your option as opposed to anything else that's out there, because they can kill two birds with one stone.
As a caveat to that, we've redirected millions of dollars that would normally go back into the system, into charity. I feel so bad about it. I'm going to do that for the rest of my life. That is no longer work. I can do that from the Bahamas on a phone, which is a great way. But nobody feels bad about it. And I'm like, it's business owners, don't believe the TV and don't believe the television shows. Your business owners are actually really, really giving people. They support more philanthropy than anything else. And when you can show them, let's just put that on automatic. Business owners love automatic, right? Let that work for me in my sleep. That's why I got into doing the work I do in the first place. Boris, thanks for coming on. Per usual, I always pick up great points from you. I think on the podcast, you need to get more of the chance to bring your own little stories from the life in there, because it's always enriching, buddy.
Well, I appreciate that, Will. It's been a phenomenal chat, and I'm going to turn it over to Erica to kind of close it out.
Erica.
All right. Thank you, Boris, and thank you, Will. It was excellent having you today. As always, you're one of my favorite people. Have always loved interacting with you, and it was great to have you on here. I do want to thank Mundo Digital Designs, our sponsor, once again, and just want to remind everybody not to forget to join us next week for an episode of Radiant Resilience with Jessica Carwatt and her guest, Pascal Bachman. So thanks again, Boris and Will. I hope you have a great day.